Hey there guys, Mike from Just Car People Things, and we are here in the garage today. We've got the garage heat on. We've had a warm snap here in the Midwest, and then suddenly a cold snap here again, where we're back down below freezing and actually got quite a bit of snow. So I haven't made a video in a couple weeks just because we've been sort of running around. Work's been kind of nuts, and this is my full-time job, believe it or not, is not just maintaining this fleet of cars and trailers and everything else here in our shop, but is actually going to take some time now to take a crack at cleaning this guy up here. So we typically have daily driven our Camaro even through the winter. In fact, we've got a set of Nokian Haka R3s on this car right now, but we ended up with a fourth car. We bought a Toyota Tundra, which is parked outside right now rather than under the lift, and I decided, hey, you know what, let's take maybe a couple months off driving this in the winter and just drive the Tundra through the absolute worst parts of like February and March. And then come April, when it warms up a little bit, we will come back to this guy right here and start driving it a little bit more often. So we're a little over a year into ownership on this Camaro, and I've been really happy with it. It's technically a 2023 model, but it's a later build. We ended up with it in January of last year. It's now at the end of March. So we've had it about 14 or 15 months. We did have the front end PPF'd. I DIY'd the PPF on the front of this car. I will never DIY PPF ever again. I am not that good at it. The people who are good at it are very good at it. And just from a personal perspective and the overall fit and finish and how the job turned out and things I'm happy with and not happy with, I am not happy with it. I spent probably $400 or $500. I probably saved almost $1,000 in labor. But I don't think at the end of the day I did a particularly good job, and I've since run into some kind of silly issues where, for example, we didn't wrap quite perfectly right here, and you can see there's some buildup underneath right there. I may ultimately take the PPF even off it and go do it professionally if I really plan to keep the Camaro long term. The other thing is that you can't really effectively PPF the hood unless you do it in matte, and that would be vinyl on top of vinyl. This is actually a vinyl coating, and the downside to the vinyl on a 1LE hood is, of course, it chips, which you can see the chips, a couple here, from highway driving. The other thing I'll mention to you about owning one of these after a year, and you can see this is another area I really wasn't happy with how the finish turned out on the PPF right here, and it just doesn't look very good. It's going to be protected and safe, and it's not going to have a bunch of stone chips on it when I remove it, but I'm not really happy with how it turned out. I did a quick maintenance wash on it probably a week or two ago before parking it. And one thing I wanted to mention too, for those of you who have Camaros, particularly 1LEs, these are pretty close to stock Camaro SS tire sizing. They're a little bit inset, but 1LE tire set, which is sitting up there, that massive set of rollers I've got set up there, the 1LE set actually will stick out past the fender, past right there. And I've got the mud guards on this. I highly recommend a set of those. If you're going to get the aftermarket rocker piece, the trim that goes on the rocker, kind of as like a ground effect, that I would highly recommend. I tend to find that even though Chevy does put a piece of PPF, which I'm running my finger along, I don't know how well you can see it right there, does put a piece of PPF along this right here, you can see the sandblast effect on this edge right here. And what's happening is that's coming off that front tire that on a 1LE is super sticky, and it sticks out. Same thing with a ZL1, it sticks out past that edge, and it's going to beat this up a little bit. So something to think about if you're doing like a long road trip. This might be one of those things you throw a little masking tape over just to protect this little piece right here that sticks out and is going to get kind of beat up. So this is just something I've noticed after about a year of ownership. Not looking too terrible yet, but keep in mind I'm running the snows quite a bit, and those aren't as sticky as the summers, and the summers are going to fling stuff at that panel right there, and you're just going to need to be cognizant of that. Some shops will remove this piece of factory PPF and then PPF that whole panel to then protect that area from spit up. So as far as that, we're a year in, so this is going to be a little bit of a quick walk around and some things I'm going to note about owning it after a year. Very happy with the Husky liners. You can see they're actually pretty dirty in this right now. I'll probably pop them out. I need to do a full detail on the car here just before it gets back on the road. and want to take some time to put a coat of good carnauba wax on it over the top of our ceramic to really make it pop. I've noticed the seats have held up very well. Haven't seen a lot of weird wear in the seats. I do treat them with the Meguiar's product pretty regularly. You can see that this probably over time is gonna, this is a really high bolster. If you look at that, that's about 4 inches tall. If you're a bigger guy, you're a heavier guy, you've got a little more size to you, this is gonna really take a beating. So that's something I think about, I'm very cognizant of. The seats also with the Alcantara inserts, you're going to need to think a little bit about making sure that you're not eating certain food in the car that might drop and then get rubbed or ground into that. Anything greasy, etc. It can be pretty tough to clean. I have found the Alcantara steering wheel to have held up pretty well. I've cleaned it twice since I've bought the car, and you basically soak it down with like a watered down carpet cleaner. You agitate it with a brush, and then you work it really hard with a microfiber. And that will stand all these fibers back up. It will remove the grease from your hands. That's natural. When you grab onto the steering wheel, that stuff happens. Same thing with the shift knob. You can do the same thing. You have to do that more frequently. You can get away with going 10,000 miles in a car with a leather steering wheel without cleaning it. I find in an Alcantara car, you're barely going to get 5,000 miles on it. It's going to be worse if you're eating burgers and fries in the car, or you're somebody who puts hand lotion on and you're using that Alcantara surface right after. It's going to get matted down. It's going to look kind of gross. You got to then agitate it with a brush and with the right cleaning products. It's just something to think about if you own a car with an Alcantara wheel. Some of the Porsches are like that, and some of the other stuff, you guys probably know that. But I was initially worried that this was going to really look like hell after 15,000 miles of daily driving. Turns out if you clean it every 4 months, 6 months, it looks fine, no issues at all. I don't have a lot of complaints about the car, which is really cool to say that. I do want to mention one thing though that has been in the news in the last few weeks, and that comes with this little OnStar symbol right here. For those of you who may have seen the New York Times article, there was a really critical article in the New York Times, particularly about GM, OnStar, Subaru Starlink, and Kia, who are collecting driving data on these vehicles and then are, without really consumer knowledge, selling it to third parties, data vendors, data brokers, big national names that you've heard of. And then your insurance company is buying that information to help rate you on how risky of a driver you are. So outside of your speeding tickets and your crash history and where you live and your credit, potentially your credit score, depending on what state you're in, we are now finding out that manufacturers are using the data they're deriving from you, from products like OnStar right there, and then beaming that up to the mothership and then selling it to your insurance company. I would warn you, I pulled my data and found out that I had multiple hard braking, hard acceleration, and high speed events. Hilariously, even including a day this vehicle was not on the road, it was on a racetrack. That was my high score for the year, for those who might be curious that I've owned the car. But just understand that car companies have moved towards this model where while they're selling you a $50,000 car, they are in turn collecting data from you and selling it out to people who might not always be acting in your best interest. So something to think about before you sign that 10 or 15 or 20 page terms of service for connected vehicle stuff. Just be very cognizant about your data. I will tell you, this car logged trips as short as 0.06 of a mile, which I have since determined is the distance of moving the car around in my driveway and pulling it back in the garage. So just something to think about. I've since made sure that practice is stopped, but just be aware that is a complaint I have about pretty much any new car. It does have the ability, it's a computer on wheels, to track you and keep an eye on you. Brakes have been great. Tires have actually held up very well. Have only done kind of one high-speed non-road related session with the tires, so they've held up. The Supercar 3s are pretty soft, pretty sticky. Happy with the Nokians. Some things I don't like beyond that, doing the walk around of the car after living with it for a year, I tend to find this area is at very high risk. The trunk access, because of where the trunk access is at, is very, very tall to get up into it. It's a relatively narrow space, though you can fit 8-foot long products in here. I have had to stop at Home Depot and grab that spare 2x4 on the way home. We've all probably been there. That will slot in. I do appreciate that the rear seats fold back, but understand that this piece of body panel right here is pretty risky, and you have to be very cognizant of loading things in and out of the vehicle and not dropping things because of how far that sticks out and the angle it sticks out at. You could end up with a real ugly scar there that you're going to be able to see very obviously. It's also a little bit tough to clean around these tail lights. It's a little tough to clean inside this space here where the rear spoiler is. I tend to find that these hold on to dirt, and you can see here I've got to go around the car before I wax it and do a good spray detail removal of some dust and stuff that sort of sticks inside these spaces. I do love the look of the taillights though, so they do look really nice. But just something to mention, I found that dirt tends to accumulate in some of these hard to reach areas on the tail, and then in turn you know, you're going to get that drip down effect, and you got to kind of work on that and make sure that works out. I will tell you from a maintenance perspective, the car is not that cheap to maintain. It is worth mentioning this is a very high performance vehicle. It is super, super capable for what it is. And that being said, the wear items both go quicker and are a little bit more expensive, though they are readily available. One thing that I will mention in particular that's a little bit hard to come by and you have to search for it and potentially order it online is the Mobil 1 0W40 supercar oil that is spec'd for the LT1 that is in this car. It's also the same oil that is used in the Corvettes and some of the Cadillac performance products. So it's not that hard to find, but do understand when I called my dealer and said, what oil do you use? They say Mobil 0W40. And when I asked if it was the supercar, the dealer said, no, we don't stock that. We just use Mobil 1 0W40, which is very concerning to me because that's the dealer down the road that maybe you might take your car to. And they're going to be doing your oil changes, and they're not going to be using the right spec oil. That's actually not what the factory recommends for the car. There are not many companies. It is really just Mobil 1, to my knowledge right now, that makes that oil. It's a little pricier. It's about 13 bucks a quart, 12 to 13 bucks a quart. Can be a titch cheaper on sale. But one thing to mention to you about that, this is a very thirsty car for oil. It takes 10 quarts of oil. So I usually buy 2 6-pack cases of it, have a couple spare quarts, and it tends to take about 10 to 10.5 quarts for me to fill this up. The upside, the factory AC Delco filter is about $5. So I tend to find an oil change for one of these cars costs about $135 to $140. If you're like me, if you have a lift, if you want to check out my video on how to do an oil change on one of these, very straightforward. It's an easy car to work on, so there's the upside there. Brakes are going to be, this is like a canned Brembo 6-piston, 4-piston set, very similar to other performance products. The brakes have held up very, very well. I think if you're not tracking it regularly, you could easily see 40,000 miles out of a street set of brakes on one of these. I also think you could probably see almost 20,000 street miles out of the Goodyear Supercar 3s. That would involve being very well behaved. Other than getting a few chips and nicks, we've been pretty lucky. We haven't had any other significant issues with the car. It tends to be pretty easy to maintain. It tends to be pretty easy to clean. The 6-speed manual is a joy. I have not had notchiness issues. I do hear that once in a while with the TR6060s, but generally speaking, it's been very, very good. I am annoyed frequently by the forward crash avoidance. You can sort of trim the settings down. It's very, very difficult to turn off. This goes back to that data collection stuff too. For OnStar, you have to be a little bit careful about. The 2SS cars have forward collision assist in these model years and the later model years, and it tends to be good but still somewhat intrusive. You know, if you have a vehicle maybe clearing your path ahead of you, turning right very clearly, you know, getting out of your way, the car is still going to freak out and yell at you. It'll turn the whole HUD red and flash at you. I don't really love it. It's really, personally, in a year of 15,000 miles of driving it, sometimes driving it very hard, I've actually never had a circumstance personally where I feel like it's saved me. If you're one of those people who has a habit of doing this while driving, I hate you, but also you should stop doing that. This might be something that you rely on a little bit more. I do have to get this checked. This happened about a couple weeks ago. I caught a rock here, and I do have a small vertical crack. It hasn't gone all the way to the edge of the windshield, so I'm hoping it can get repaired. We will see. So I'm hoping we don't have to drop a new windshield in it, but that's just kind of the game here in Michigan. Interior's held up well. Motor's held up well. It doesn't consume a ton of oil. I tend to notice it eats probably about half a quart every couple thousand miles. I think that's very, very normal, especially when I look over here at this, and this thing tends to drink oil, particularly at high RPM. S2000s are kind of notorious for that. With certain synthetic oils, they will eat them. So driving notes, what else to tell you about it? It's awesome. I mean, it's just a big, mean, fast car. It is everything you could hope for in a fast car, and I really can't talk anyone out of owning one of these. What's nuts to me is that if you were to buy this car today used, if I was to sell this car today, it would probably be worth between about $45,000 and about $50,000 used. And that's lightly used, right? 15,000 miles, maybe a year old, still under warranty, well kept, ceramic coated. It's been, really a well kept car. If you were to go, and my friend just texted me, he's been looking for a GR Corolla, Sonic Blue. He found one for sale locally. Super cool car. I love the GR Corolla. It's the successor to the Evo that I used to own. I've got a picture of the Evo up there on the wall. It's just a really neat car. The flip side to the incredible cost of those cars, that is a 3-cylinder all-wheel drive hatchback. That car at the dealer was stickered at $49,000. So you have to ask yourself, do you desperately need the hatchback? Do you want that rally car life? Because $50K for a Toyota Corolla or $50K for a V8 manual rear-wheel drive, big sports car, muscle car, that's a math problem you got to ask yourself about what you really want in a car. So something to think about in the market we're in right now. A lot of stuff has moved way, way up market. Civic Type R, GR Corolla, some of these cars, you're going to be able to buy a 4-cylinder turbocharged or 3-cylinder turbocharged car for a long time to come in the market. The flip side of that is not going to be the case for big, fast V8 cars. These are kind of the last of the dinosaurs. That is why I went and bought a new one, and why I think it's just such a cool car. So that said, it's a quick walk around of the car. I can show you under the hood. I did throw it on a battery tender. And I'll be honest with you, I have not detailed under the hood in this car. I don't think actually even since I bought it. I'm probably going to hell for that. But get the hood open for you. This is the beating heart of the 1LE Camaro, which is the LT1. And this is the same exact engine setup as the Camaro SS, and really is pretty great. The one thing I will mention about 1LEs is that these cars are actually built with a hand-built motor, and if you peel this cover up here on the side that says Camaro, there's actually a guy's name from the factory in Bowling Green that hand-assembled this motor, which I think is really cool, and that's just not something you see a ton of. But overall, it's been a great car. The service intervals have been easy. The services have been easy. The rear diff fluid was really easy to change. The engine oil is very easy to change. It's just really... They've basically been building some variation of this for 50 years, right? I mean, since the 60s, it's been a front engine, transmission rate behind it, rear diff and back, rear-wheel drive car. And the great thing about owning a car that is the end run of that sort of development is a lot of the bugs have really been worked out. You don't hear a lot of reliability issues. The only thing I do worry about is the lifters in these are shared with some of the AFM V8s, as I understand, the active fuel management V8s. It is something I think about and I'm a little bit nervous about long term. Again, that's going to come back to frequent oil changes, monitoring your oil levels, and doing all that stuff the right way. So that said, it is super cool to sit at a traffic light and see the heat soak out of there. And I'm really glad you guys could tune in for maybe this 1-year ownership update of our 1LE Camaro. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate you much for tuning in for this stuff. Cheers, guys.